As somatic sex educators, we're working with the nervous system. We're guiding it to learn and to grow. The whole field is based on the observation that sexual trauma and repression get stuck in the body. Our personal and cultural wounds are expressed in the tightness of our sphincters, in our breath, our muscle tension, our posture, and our patterns of sexual response. So instead of approaching healing and holing through narratives produced by the conscious mind, in the way of psychoanalysis, for example, in somatic sex education, we're working through body-based exercises and experiences. And in this way, we're supporting nervous system change, supporting people in bringing more ease and pleasure and aliveness into their bodies, and with that, changing their stories. Neuroscientist Daniel Siegel describes it this way, that we're embodied and embedded. So we're embodied in the sense we don't have a brain that's thinking separately from our bodies. We feel, experience, and understand the world through our asshole, through our skin, through our neurochemistry that's coursing through our bodies and regulating and dysregulating our moods. And we're also embedded. We're embedded in a world of social relations, in a world of nature and spirit. So neuroplasticity is the concept that explains how somatic sex education works. To understand that our brain and our nervous system is not static. It's continually evolving and changing, just as our muscles change and grow when we work out, and they atrophy when we don't. So our whole brain and nervous system is continually changing, and an environment of enrichment and diverse stimulation will cause the brain and the nervous system to change and to grow. An environment of trauma or neglect will provoke nervous system atrophy. And of course, most people don't get enrichment and diverse stimulation when it comes to sex. We really live in a society where sexual violence, trauma, and neglect are cultural norms. So for many people, sexual feelings trigger profound distress, anxiety, or distraction. And people can feel seized against their will by their nervous system responses, that they have no choice. They're on their way to a nice sexual experience or connection, and suddenly they're hijacked by feelings of profound anxiety or disinterest. It's through changing the nervous system that we start to feel more empowered agency, to feel that we have more choice in sexual situations. So as we navigate the world, information from the sensory environment goes directly into our inner brain, into the amygdala, the danger sensors of the brain. They register whether, for example, a person in a red sweater is a source of danger because perhaps a person in a red sweater hurt us in the past. And even though we might be consciously evaluating a situation and saying, hey, this particular person in a red sweater is someone nice that I want to explore a relationship with, that inner brain, those processes have already been triggered, and our body's awash with stress hormones as soon as that red sweater appears on the horizon. It's a process that is known as amygdala hijack. Perceiving danger is a whole body experience. If we're in touch with body sensations, we're going to be awash with them. Digestion shuts down, sexual response goes flat, our muscles tense, our breath gets shorter, we're preparing to face a threat. there's a cascade of effects throughout our bodies as our autonomic nervous system rallies us. We may feel a sense of wanting to fight, to run and hide, to appease, to make everything all better, to simply freeze, go numb, or dissociate, start thinking about something else. Our mind might get busy with stories about managing the threat, or stories about shame and helplessness. And with all the trauma that people experience around sex, most of us are in some kind of state of autonomic nervous system dysregulation, where we're experiencing the visceral signs of unsafety, even when we consciously think that we are safe. Our bodies are responding to danger. And we can try and gain some measure of control by ignoring gut feelings and going flat, going numb. So cycling sometimes between feeling distress and agitation, and then going flat, feeling disinterested and numb. So if we want to regulate our autonomic nervous system, there are three options. Top-down regulation is about using our brains to monitor our body sensation. In this unit, we've talked a lot about somatic awareness, so bringing our awareness to the cascade of sensation inside our bodies. And in doing so, we gain some insight and also some measure of control, that these body activities aren't just happening to us, but they're happening with our awareness. We're detaching from the anxious rumination of our cortical structures and bringing awareness to what's going on inside our bodies. Bottom-up regulation, that refers to our ability to use body activities to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So primary here is breath. We've learned about using the breath to regulate our feeling states. By breathing more quickly, we become more awake, more aroused. By breathing more slowly, we become more relaxed. So breathing is a great way for bottom-up regulation. Also posture, tension, muscle tension, all kinds of ways that we can use our body to talk to our mind and to calm our mind. And then there's interactive regulation, which is actually knowing that we can regulate our autonomic nervous system distress by the connection and caring companionship of safe enough others. So loved ones, friends, community, the community that we're creating here in this program allows us to regulate our nervous system distress. So the practices of somatic sex education are actually helping us generate an inner neurochemical environment that correlates with happiness and well-being. So our activities like somatic awareness, body scanning, mindful erotic practice, the increased focus on sex, touch, respect, acts of kindness, these are helping us shrink the amygdala, the brain's danger sensors, to inhibit the production of cortisol, the fear hormones, the stress neurochemistry, and to actually foster the neurochemistry of well-being, oxytocin, the hormone of connection and care that increases with an increased focus on sex as well as touch and acts of kindness. In addition to other happiness neurochemistry like dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. This graphic from the Strozzi Institute is one of my favorites, and to me it speaks beautifully of how we work as somatic sex educators. We work through somatic awareness, so bringing our attention and awareness to the life of the body. In that way, we're developing choice, developing the capacity for mindfulness, for increased presence. And also somatic openings. We work through somatic openings that can be generated through mindful erotic practice, through erotic touch, through workshop experiences. These openings that help us to see and to feel and to live what's possible. And then there's somatic practice. So the repetition, the thousands and thousands of repetitions and practices that it takes to actually create new neural pathways that become our new neural defaults. Perhaps several thousand times of practicing doing things differently before we can actually have that as our go-to, our default. So all these awareness openings and practices work together within a social context that shapes our tasks, it shapes our well-being, and then we in turn shape the social context through these practices. And all these somatic practices also connect us with nature and with spirit. So psychology has traditionally endeavored to help people to regulate their distress, to gain more well-being, by having more conscious understanding of what has happened to them. But neuroscience has shown us that actually it's not a deficit of insight and understanding that keeps people from living whole and happy lives. It's more that the body continues to register distress, that it has actually, our nervous system has actually been damaged by experiences of trauma and distress, and that there's this chronic sense of unsafety within us, this visceral sense of unsafety that can only be addressed through body-based exercises and experiences. So that's what we do with somatic sex education. We create a safe enough relational environment to explore and to heal the autonomic nervous system distress that is a consequence of the way that sex is, the culture of sex that can be so harmful, and the actual personal experiences of trauma and neglect, of danger, that so many of us have to contend with around sex, around gender, around sexuality, and ways of feeling that we don't measure up to the norm, the standard, the desirable. So all these things are lodged in our bodies, and they can be dislodged and transformed through somatic practices.